The hot wind moved across the dry land, carrying dust and silence together. The desert stretched far and wide, showing only rocks, cactus, and the faint smoke of a campfire far away. In that lonely place rode a man named Luke Carson, a cowboy who had seen too much in life but spoke very little about it. His horse, a brown stallion named Dusty, moved slowly, as if it too could feel the weight of the world pressing down. Luke was not the kind of man who searched for trouble. He was a traveler, a man who helped where he could, traded when he had to, and kept to himself most days. But fate had its own plans for him that day. As the sun dropped lower, he saw something unusual near a group of large rocks, something that did not belong to the land. When he came closer, he found a young woman lying on the ground, weak and hurt. Her wrists were tied, her face pale with exhaustion, and her eyes closed tight as if she had fought a long, hard battle. Luke quickly jumped off his horse and knelt beside her. He saw she was Apache, one of the native people who lived in the nearby hills. He had heard many stories about them, some good, most not, but looking at her now, all he saw was a human being in pain. Carefully, he untied her wrists, gave her some water from his canteen, and waited until she opened her eyes. When she did, they were sharp and wild, like those of a frightened animal. She tried to move away, but she was too weak. "Easy," Luke said softly, holding out his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you." Her eyes darted from him to his horse, then to the open land around them. She looked like she wanted to run, but her body would not listen. "Why, you help me?" she whispered in broken English. Her voice trembled, but her eyes still held strength. "Because you need it," Luke said simply. "No one deserves to die alone out here." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then as the wind howled again, she nodded weakly. He helped her sit up, wrapped his coat around her shoulders, and set up a small fire. He gave her a piece of bread and some dried meat. She ate slowly, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. As the flames flickered between them, Luke finally asked, "What happened to you?" She hesitated, her eyes looking down. "White men," she said at last, her voice trembling. "They came. They took many from my village. I run. They chase. I fall." Luke felt anger rise in him. He had seen too many cruel acts done in the name of greed and land. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "They won't find you here." The woman looked up at him with disbelief. "No one's safe," she said. "Not Apache. Not woman." Her words struck him hard. There was truth in them, a truth that went beyond any border or race. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but he couldn't find the right words. So instead he made sure the fire burned steady and gave her his blanket. As night came, the stars lit the sky like 1,000 silent watchers. Luke sat awake, keeping guard while she slept. Her breathing was uneven at first, filled with pain and fear, but slowly it softened. For the first time, Luke realized how tired he was too, not just from the day, but from years of wandering, fighting, and trying to make sense of a world that seemed to have no mercy. The next morning, when the first light of dawn touched the desert, she was awake. She looked stronger than before, though her eyes still held the sadness of someone who had lost much. Luke handed her a cup of water and asked gently, "What's your name?" She hesitated, as if sharing it meant giving away a piece of herself. Then she said, "Naya." Luke nodded. "Naya," he repeated. "That's a good name." She looked at him curiously. "You cowboy?" "Something like that," he said with a faint smile. "Used to herd cattle down south. Now I mostly travel where the trail takes me." Naya studied him for a moment. "Why you alone?" she asked softly. Luke shrugged. "Guess I never found a place that felt like home." Naya looked at the horizon. "Same," she said. "Home, gone." Her words carried more pain than any tear could show. Luke didn't ask more. Instead, he packed his few belongings and said, "You can ride with me until we find a safe place." She looked unsure. "Cowboy help Apache?" Why, Luke smiled sadly. Because helping someone shouldn't need a reason. Naya stared at him for a long moment. Then she slowly nodded and allowed him to help her onto his horse. Dusty neighed softly, as if understanding the importance of this fragile trust forming between man and woman, between two worlds that rarely met in peace. As they rode across the desert, silence filled the air, but it was a gentle kind of silence. Naya watched the land around her, the dry hills, the red rocks, the endless sky. Each mile they traveled seemed to take her a little further from fear, though she still looked behind now and then, as if expecting someone to appear. By midday, they stopped near a small stream to rest. Luke filled their canteens and caught a fish for them to share. Naya watched him quietly, her eyes full of thought. "You not like other men," she said finally. "You kind." Luke looked up at her. "Kind doesn't always mean good," he said quietly. "I've done things I'm not proud of." Naya tilted her head. "But you helped me," she said simply. "That good." Her words made Luke smile for the first time in days. Maybe, he thought, goodness was not about what you had done in the past, but what you chose to do now. As the sun began to set again, Naya spoke of her village, of her people's songs, the laughter of children and the river that once gave them life. Her voice grew softer when she spoke of her family, her mother's stories, and her brother who had tried to protect them. Luke listened quietly, feeling her pain as if it were his own. He did not interrupt. He simply let her speak because he knew that sometimes the best way to heal was to let the memories breathe. When she finished, she looked at him and said, "I owe you my life." Luke shook his head. "No, you owe me nothing. You just keep living. That's enough." The wind grew colder and Naya pulled his coat tighter around herself. For the first time, she didn't seem afraid of him. There was something gentle in her eyes now. Not trust yet, but the beginning of it. That night, as they rested near the campfire again, Luke felt something change in the air. It wasn't danger, but a strange sense that their paths had crossed for a reason. Maybe he was meant to find her, to help her heal. Maybe through helping her, he could heal himself too. As the firelight danced on their faces, Naya looked at the flames and whispered, "You different, cowboy. But careful. World break kind hearts." Luke stared into the fire, thinking about her words. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said softly, "Then I guess we'll have to be tougher than the world." Naya smiled faintly, the first true smile he had seen on her face. For that moment, in the middle of the endless desert, surrounded by silence and starlight, they were not enemies or strangers. They were just two souls trying to survive, holding onto a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, kindness could still exist in a cruel world. As the wind blew again and the fire crackled low, Naya closed her eyes, feeling safe for the first time in a long while. Luke sat beside her, keeping watch over the dark horizon, ready for whatever the next day might bring. He didn't know what waited ahead, but he knew one thing: he wasn't alone anymore. The next morning came quietly, with the golden light touching the rocks and the sound of birds echoing far away. Luke was already awake, feeding his horse and checking the trail. Naya sat near the fire, her long dark hair shining under the sunlight. She looked stronger now, her eyes sharper, her spirit slowly returning. Luke handed her a piece of bread and smiled. "We should move soon," he said. "If those men are still looking for you, they won't stop easily." Naya nodded. "They hunt everything," she said. "Even those who want peace." Luke looked toward the horizon. "Then we'll give them a trail that's hard to follow." They packed their things and started riding north. The land around them began to change. The dry sand turned into rocky ground, and in the distance, small trees began to appear. Luke knew there was a small town a few miles away, but he wasn't sure if it was safe for her. People in those towns didn't always welcome strangers, especially not an Apache woman. By noon, the heat grew stronger, and they stopped under a large tree. Naya watched him as he filled her cup with water. "Why you help me so much?" she asked softly. Luke wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered. "You needed help and I was there. That's all." Naya shook her head. "Many see no help. You different." Luke looked at her for a moment. "Maybe I've seen enough pain in my life," he said quietly. "I don't want to add to it." She didn't answer, but there was a small smile on her face, a smile of understanding. That afternoon, they reached the edge of an abandoned cabin hidden near the woods. Luke decided to rest there for the night. He checked inside first, dusty, but safe. Naya helped gather dry wood for the fire. It was the first time she worked beside someone without fear. As they cooked a small meal, Luke noticed how carefully she handled everything, How she watched the flames, how she moved with quiet strength. "You must have lived hard," he said. Naya looked at him. "My people live with earth, not against it," she replied. "But white men come, take land, take peace, we fight, we lose." Her voice trembled slightly. Luke didn't interrupt. He let her speak, knowing how much she had held inside. "I remember the night they came," she continued softly. "They burned homes. My brother told me to run. I run until I can't breathe. Then I fall." She looked away, blinking fast. "Then you find me." Luke felt a heavy silence between them. "You're safe now," he said again. But this time his voice carried more meaning. She looked at him with tearful eyes. "Safe with Cowboy," she said gently, "but not safe in world." Luke sighed. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I'll do what I can to keep you safe, Naya." The firelight flickered between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees like distant voices. Later that night, as they sat quietly, Luke heard something, a sound from the woods. He raised his hand, signaling Naya to stay quiet. Then he stepped outside, his gun ready. The sound came again, footsteps, slow and careful. A man's voice called out, "Who's there?" Luke stayed silent, his eyes scanning the dark. Then a shadow moved between the trees. 3 riders. He recognized the rough look in their eyes, the same men who might have attacked Naya's village. He quickly returned inside. "We need to go," he whispered. "Now." Naya's face turned pale. "They come again?" "Yes," he said. "We'll take the back trail. Stay close to me." They grabbed their things quickly, and within seconds, they were back on the horse, riding into the dark forest. The sound of hooves followed them not far behind. Luke pushed Dusty to go faster. The trees blurred past them, the wind hitting their faces. Naya held onto him tightly, praying silently. After a long chase, they reached a river. Luke stopped for a second, looking at the fast-moving water. "Hold on," he said, and without another word he drove the horse straight into the river. Cold water splashed around them, soaking their clothes. The current was strong, but Luke guided Dusty carefully until they reached the other side. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Naya looked back. The men were gone. Only the moonlight and the sound of the river remained. Luke laughed softly, tired but relieved. "We lost them." Naya smiled for the first time with true joy. "You brave," she said, breathing heavily. "Crazy, but brave." He chuckled. "Maybe both." They set camp again near the other side of the river. Luke built a small fire while Naya wrapped herself in a blanket. Her eyes followed the stars above. "My mother say stars guide our spirits," she whispered. "Maybe they guide me to you." Luke looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe they did," he said. For the next few days, they traveled together, helping each other through every hardship. Naya learned how to ride properly, how to aim a small bow Luke had made for her. She taught him how to read the sky, how to find water by watching birds, and how to listen to the earth before it spoke through danger. Slowly, they began to trust each other not just for survival but for something deeper. They became friends bound by shared pain and hope. One morning as they climbed a hill, Luke stopped suddenly. Down below was a group of wagons, soldiers, maybe settlers. "If they see us together," Luke said, "they might think I'm hiding you." Naya looked afraid. "They take me again?" "Not if I can help it," he said firmly. But before they could turn back, one of the soldiers spotted them. "Hey, you there!" a man shouted, pointing his rifle. Luke cursed under his breath. "Ride, Naya!" They rushed forward again. Gunshots echoed behind them. Dust rose around their horses' hooves as they sped across the rocky ground. One bullet grazed Luke's arm, but he didn't stop. "Hold on," he shouted. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a deep canyon. Luke looked down at the narrow bridge made of old wooden planks. It was risky, but their only chance. He took a deep breath. "We go across," he said. Naya looked at him with fear. Bridge break. Maybe, Luke said. But we can't stay here. They galloped onto the bridge. The wood creaked, the ropes strained, and the canyon below roared like thunder. For a moment, it felt like the whole world would fall apart. But somehow they made it across. When they reached the other side, Luke turned and cut the ropes with his knife. The bridge fell, crashing into the canyon below, leaving the soldiers stranded. Breathing hard, he looked at Naya. We did it. Naya's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief. You saved me again, she said. Luke smiled weakly. You'd do the same. They found shelter in a cave nearby. Luke's arm was bleeding, and Naya quickly tore a piece of her shawl to wrap it. You helped me. Now I help you, she said softly. Her hands trembled slightly, but her care was gentle. Luke looked at her, feeling a warmth that went beyond gratitude. You're strong, Naya, he said. Stronger than you think. She met his eyes. Maybe, because someone believe I can be. The night passed quietly. The danger was far behind them now, and for the first time, both felt peace. The next morning, the sunlight fell across their faces. Luke stood at the edge of the cave, looking at the endless land before them. Where will you go now? He asked. Naya stepped beside him. My people gone, she said softly. But maybe I find new place. A place where no one owned the sky or the ground. Luke nodded. That's a good dream. She looked at him. You come? Luke smiled faintly. Maybe for a while. The trail's long. Company helps. Naya smiled back, the kind of smile that carried hope instead of fear, and so they rode again. Two lost souls moving through a land that didn't understand them but no longer controlled them. The sun followed them, the wind pushed them forward, and the stars above shone bright, as if watching their story unfold. Naya looked at him once more and said softly, half laughing, Easy, cowboy. You'll break me. Luke smiled. No, Naya, he said gently. We'll fix each other. And with that, they disappeared into the wide open land, leaving behind the pain of the past and riding toward a tomorrow that, for the first time, felt like freedom.